But talk to me about psychedelics.
What do you want to know?
Well, you tell him.
About your mushroom experience.
I lost my psychedelics virginity 3 weeks ago.
So go for it.
I mean, not too much to tell. A mutual friend, you'll know, offered us the chance to go up to his property in Texas and try mushrooms. And I was apprehensive because I have a bad history with drugs, and I haven't done drugs in years. And so I was just mildly nervous about it. And I had a great time. It was amazing. It was really superficial. A lot of shapes and it wasn't what I expected. I always thought you do psychedelics and you just you see little green men or whatever, the cliche thing. I didn't realize it's an experience you mostly do with your eyes closed. And I would drift between just like I'm closing my eyes now, shapes and colors, and then going into like these trance like dreams where I wasn't seeing it, but I knew what was happening, and then I would come out. And it was a very superficial experience. I tried to go in and be introspective. I tried to ask some big questions about parenting, relationship with my ex-wife. None of that happened.
No answers.
No answers. Although, I would say some of those relationships have improved since, but I didn't get any of that. But I definitely got I got this hunger to go back and do it again.
Yeah, I mean, so this is something I've been interested in since 20 years old. And, at the time, it was just you get together with your guy friends and you go for a giggle fest, right? You all take a few grams and it's meant to be a big fun time. And I double dosed myself accidentally. So let's say we were doing a recreational dose of 2 grams. It ended up being 4 or 5. And it was a super challenging time because at a lower dose, things are squirrely and it's fun and all that kind of stuff. At a higher dose, I think it brings you to a state of consciousness that's incredibly disruptive to your ego, your conception of yourself, and all that encompasses. And if you're not ready, if you don't think there's anything other than that, first of all, but if you're not ready for that to be disrupted for a time, all the associations and aspects of your identity that allow you to move through the world confidently. I'm Peter, this is what I believe, this is what I have, this is what my preferences are. All that stuff gets packaged up so that you can move through the world, the chaos of it, the threats of it, and be basically okay. What the psychedelic experience can do, and I say can because you can approach this differently. The punchline is a very high dose in silent darkness, either out in nature or inside. So 5 dried grams of psilocybin plus in the right setting, silence, no shenanigans, anything like that. It's stripped. For a time, it delivers you to a perspective that is not tethered in the conception of yourself. It strips all that away. This is the idea of ego death, right? Like, you no longer have a conception of yourself. And then it begs the question, well, what the fuck is my awareness when it's not tethered to all these things that I think I am? And you feel very naked. And a lot of people are not ready for that. It's a terrifying experience. And so when I was not ready for that and had this accidental dose, I was in a ball on the floor. I was actually outside by the shed. And, I left my friend, I got to go outside. And I was there for 45 minutes. It was hell because I didn't know who I was. I didn't know what was going on. I thought I was going crazy. And then, I realized I had to stay with it. I had enough gumption, I guess, to be like, no, don't be a pussy, stay. And I did that, and then it just clicked. And it all went away, and a feeling of, again, there's no language that can properly encompass this. It's an ineffable experience, and it all sounds so cliche, but union with the ground of being, let's say. And I think you can only have that experience if that union is not being disrupted by the different things that cause you to be a differentiated individual, a differentiated idea of yourself. You can't experience that degree of unity if you have all these things that are separating you from that. I realize this is all very weird language, but the punchline is that experience caused me to pursue a greater understanding of all this stuff. So I went on Amazon the next day, bought every single book they have on psychedelics. 6 months later, I was down in the Amazon for 3 months, living with a shaman, doing ayahuasca on the regular, trying to figure all this stuff out. And
what was that like?
I mean, the jungle sucks. It's so oppressive, like just the heat and the bugs and all that kind of stuff. But, again, curious person, I had to know, like, what is this? What's going on? It's not what I've been told. It's not just a recreational thing. It's not just, drugs are bad, stay away from them. It's something different. There's something of value here. And I wanted to know what that was. And so I was like, well, they've been doing it in the jungle for thousands of years and they take it seriously. And I'm not going to be put in jail if I do it there. So let's go figure it out. And it's hard to convey to you, precisely what the benefit was. But broadly speaking, a broader perspective on who I am, what consciousness is, what reality is. And then, of course, the question we've been dancing around this whole time is, how then should I behave? Who should I strive to become? I mean, that's the punchline of everything we do. And I find that those pursuits done responsibly are a phenomenal tool or a phenomenal help in that enterprise, in that purpose. I can give you more details if you want. But,
yeah, I want it. Please do.
I want to know, in the jungle, why do they do it? Like, what's their reasoning?
Well, I mean, so the Amazon is a massive place, right? It's basically the size of continental U.S., and much of it is explored still because it's such a thick environment. It's just thick jungle and rivers and mush everywhere. But the shamans, in most places, will say that they've been doing it for thousands of years, and they've done it to access, the quote unquote spirit realm. And I know, like, a lot of us would have an aversion to that characterization, but let's just say another experience of awareness or consciousness. And, some tribes would do that because they felt there was a benefit to be gained by having someone that could access those realms and bring back different kinds of wisdom, whether it be like personal wisdom for how the tribe should act or behave. And of course, there's like a hunting and element of this, like divination sort of thing. And I don't know much about that. Like, I don't think these experiences like allow you to predict the rain or where the animals are going to be or any of that kind of stuff. But when you're not so locked into your own individuated awareness, I think you're able to access greater pattern recognition because you're connected to more things. At least that's the sense. And so when you're like that, can you observe the patterns of nature better? I definitely think you can, because you're not distracted by all the torrent of thoughts that you usually have and all the different blockages that get in the way. If you really are kind of more connected to all that is, well, then I think you can derive greater insights from how all that is working. And so I think that's part of how or why those practices emerge. They still don't really know how, because, the combination of ayahuasca specifically, it's different for like magic mushrooms and stuff like that. But ayahuasca specifically is two plants from the Amazon, and there's like a shitload of plants in the Amazon, right? So how did you figure out that you had to combine these two? And it's not just like you pull one leaf off a tree and pull another one off and eat it. You have to get a ton of this stuff, like biomass, and boil it down in a giant cauldron for a whole day. And so you might have like, 10 gallons or more of water, and you get a liter out of it, of this sludge. It's horrible. It's like drinking mud.
Do you have to drink the whole thing?
No, God, no. You drink a shot of it.
Okay.
And then it delivers this experience. But the question remains, like, how did they figure that out? Trial and error, I guess. I guess a lot of guys wound up dead in figuring that out. But it's remained for so many years because of the great value in it. And if we look at the Western world, broadly speaking, psychoactive practices generally have been instrumental to civilization. That seems to be the case. Now, it's not always psychoactive substances. Rhythmic dancing, ordeal poisons, fasting, all of this kind of stuff has been used to perturb consciousness to varying degrees. And cultures all throughout history, yoga is another one, for example, have engaged in them for some reason. And I think, broadly speaking, we can say the reason is because there's a benefit to doing so. There's some sort of wisdom to be derived from shifting your perspective for a period of time, deriving wisdom or insight, and then shifting it back afterwards, and then integrating that wisdom and insight into your life and into the culture. And I think if Bitcoin really is the base for a new culture, and I think it probably is, and maybe it doesn't happen for another 500 years, but I think that's the premise we often work with. I think we're going to see a resurgence of these practices, be they plant derived or otherwise, in forming the basis of that culture. And so to answer your previous question, like for me, I went in that direction because I didn't see a solution in the exterior cultural world. Now I see the solution in the exterior cultural world, i.e. in Bitcoin, as well as the interior landscape that you're able to explore and refine through the responsible use of psychedelics. And a final capstone on that is, have you ever heard of Eleusis in ancient Greece?
No.
So this is a particularly notable one, but like people like Plato and all the famous people from the classical Greek world attributed the height or the value or the advancement of their civilization to these practices that took place at a town outside of Athens called Eleusis. And the formal name for them is the Eleusinian Mysteries. And it was a rite that you experience once in your life if you were a notable person in the ancient Greek world. And we don't know much about it, but it seems to be the case that it was fostering an experience of an altered state of consciousness. It seems like evidence is starting to show that it was a psychoactive substance of some kind. But the punchline is that people would have this experience and then they would come away with it and saying that was the most significant, consequential, valuable experience of my entire life. And it revivified the culture. And then in the modern day, as you know, because psychedelics were, popular in the 60s, burst on the scene, and then they were criminalized and pushed underground. And only in the last 20 years have places like NYU, Johns Hopkins started to do the medical research on them. And when you read the reports of the people that are involved in these studies, they too report that done in the right way, these experiences are among the most significant experiences of their life. And they stay with them for the rest of their life. And again, begs the question, why is that? What's going on there? And that's what they're trying to discover. And I think, the medical approach will only go so far, because it's hard to write down on a notepad when you ask someone like, tell me about God, or tell me about how you just unified with the ground of reality. It's kind of a hard thing to write down and articulate. But I think by virtue of the fact that more freedom is emerging through Bitcoin and people are more interested in their own development and refinement, who should I be and what should I value, they're naturally going to go to these experiences because those experiences very much help determine the former. And I'm a bad example because I probably self-select and pay attention to more of this stuff. But it seems to me to be the case that a lot of Bitcoiners are starting to become interested in this pursuit for that very reason. And so if we really are contributing to the emergence of a new culture, I think these methods of perturbing consciousness and accessing a different perspective for a period of time are going to be fairly central to that.